What's up, guys? For today, I decided to try out the newbie booktube tag, which I can't help but stumble on apparently. So yeah, I'll just jump right into things. The first question I think is, why did you start this channel? So a few different reasons for it. I love reading, first of all, which is probably kind of obvious. It's one of my favorite things to do in the world, so I thought that this could be a good way for me to kind of keep expressing my passion for reading, sharing my thoughts on different books, and just having fun with it. The other thing is that my channel is kind of a mixed theme channel. It is definitely heavily focused on reading, but it's also a fitness channel on the other side of it as well. So I'd been thinking for a while of starting a fitness channel that focused more on pre-T trans guys, and that's where my motivations for that side of the channel lies. Yeah, so I guess I just kind of thought it would be a fun way for me to combine two of my favorite hobbies and learn new things, just learning how to speak better in front of a camera, for example, um, or even just learning about video editing too, because before I started this channel, I knew very little to nothing about that. So yeah, I just thought it would be a fun way to combine those two favorite hobbies and learn some new stuff along the way. So the next question is, what are some fun and unique things you can bring to BookTube? I didn't really know how to answer this. There are so many booktubers out there covering so many different things that I'm not sure I can say what's going to be specifically unique about the channel. I know what I plan to have fun with this channel. But as far as unique, I'm not too sure. Uh, One thing could be that I don't read, I don't, or at least I don't plan to focus a ton on new releases. I know a lot of booktube, there can be a lot of excitement around new releases. Like I know recently when the new Stormlight Archive book came out, Rhythms of War, there's been a lot of coverage on that for understandable reasons. But for me, I think I'm probably going to focus more on what I'm reading, obviously. But a lot of what I read is not, like I don't tend to read new releases right when they come out or the year they come out. I often wait for the paperback and because there's just a lot of stuff generally that are still on my to-read list from past years, from past decades, even past centuries that I'm not really one to jump immediately on new releases unless, for example, it's from like a favorite author or something like that, or something about it really stands out to me, then for sure I'll grab it. For example, Ian Robinson's third Trickster book is coming out in March 2021, I think. I think it's March. And I loved Son of a Trickster and Trickster Drift. Like, those are up there as some of my all-time favorite books, even though they're pretty recent. 2016, I guess, was when Son of a Trickster came out, if I'm not wrong. But yeah, like I might even buy the hardcover for that. Like I think I did that with Trickster Drift too, just because I can't wait. I love her, I love her work, and I love that series. So I will probably check that out. So the third question is, what are you most excited for about this new channel? I'm pretty excited for most of the things I have planned for it. There are a few upcoming videos I'm excited about. For example, the next one I'm hoping will be, I recently finished Octavia Butler's Pattern Master series, which I loved. It was really great. And Octavia Butler is one of my favorite authors, so no surprise that I love this too. So I plan to do a series wrap up of the Pattern Master series, but the more I was thinking about that, the more I thought like, hey, actually, I kind of want to do like a video series on everything that Octavia Butler has written, since completing this Pattern Master series meant that I've now read all of her novels. So, and as I was reading the Pattern Master, I started noticing things too and thinking back to some of her past books, thinking back to like Xenogenesis, Fledgling, whatever, and seeing like certain patterns in her writing. So I think, yeah, I want to do a video series about each of her works and then kind of considering them all as a whole and just the themes that kind of spread across, looking at things that she obviously wanted to like zone in on and kind of explore. So yeah, that's something I'm super excited to try out, especially in video format, because like I'm used to writing about stuff like that, and I think in general I'm stronger at writing down my thoughts than speaking them. So it'll be interesting for me to try to kind of excel at that and improve at that and actually make a good video on that. So we'll see. I'm excited to try though. The other thing I'm pretty excited about, although it might be a little bit down the line that I try this, but I do at one point want to tackle some genre history books, especially dystopian and apocalyptic fiction. Like I'm really interested in the histories of those genres and reading, especially books that kind of have been buried in time within those genres and that we don't often see in the popular mind as being major influences, but when you actually look at the influence they had on other authors of that time, like Jack London's The Iron Heel, what the impact of that was on like 1984 and more popular books like that, for example. I'm really interested in yeah looking at the history of those two genres. So yeah, excitement abounds for me, anyways. We'll see what the end result is, but I really look forward to trying to put those together. So the next question is, why do you love reading? I've seen this come up a lot on like Reddit or different forums and other places like that. Like people asking, why do you love reading fantasy or why do you love reading generally? And I never know how to answer that question. I just do. Like I love reading with a fiery passion. It's, like I said, one of my favorite things to do. And definitely my favorite form of entertainment too. I would always much prefer reading over TV shows and movies. And in some cases, I'm even like disappointed or kind of like try to avoid a lot of movie and TV show adaptations for some reason. I think for me, books are kind of king when it comes to entertainment and imagination and possibilities, even when books are kind of covering very well used tropes or common tropes. I still find something unique and interesting in whichever way that authors choose to use those tropes. I just find I rarely get bored of books. And also, characters, I think, for me in books just feel more real. It's easier for me to connect to them than other forms of entertainment. The stories also, even if the stories are cliche, they don't always feel that way to me, and I find even in the most cliche, at least in most cases, like obviously not in every case, but in a lot of ways, even some of the most cliche books and the cliche stories and plot lines, I still find something in them to think about. So I'm never really bored, I guess, by books, and I just always, if anything, it's the opposite. Like, I even rarely DNF books just because there's just something about reading and immersing myself in a world that makes it hard for me to actively dislike a lot of the books that I choose to read. I don't know if that's about selection or whatever, but yeah, I I just really love the feeling of reading, the immersion of reading, the way that the way that I can connect to characters in a book versus other kinds of entertainment, I guess. The other thing too is I find reading is that I like about reading is it's great for my mental health. I just find, especially when I'm feeling anxious or feeling like hit by depression, reading can really help alleviate that for me. So another plus side of reading. So the next question is, what book or series got you into reading? It's hard to say because I've always loved reading, like I said. I think the first few that probably turned me into a little bit more of an obsessive reader were stuff like Goosebumps and Fear Street. Goosebumps in like elementary school, Fear Street a bit later on in middle school. I was obsessed with Redwall for a long, long time, starting when I was probably like 7, 8 years old until the end of middle school. Yeah, I was pretty obsessed with that. But even going back, I remember like in grade two, I remember me and my friend used to get detention a lot, which I actually loved because detention was always in the library. So I got to read a lot of Nancy Drew Hardy Boy books. And I remember there was like this weird dog Sherlock Holmes series, and I can't remember if it was like a choose your own adventure mystery. I never managed to find, like I've tried to find it since then, but I never actually found what the title was or found it again, like in my adult life. So I have no idea, but I was pretty obsessed with those in grade two. Um, so yeah, like I said, it's kind of hard to pinpoint. But since I am going to be covering a lot of fantasies, I guess I'll just say as a bonus to that, probably the series that made me decide like yes, or cognitively aware that like yes, I am a fantasy fan was probably when I was around 14 and I started reading Forgotten Realms, especially like um, Legend of Drizzt by R.A. Salvatore, the Icewind Dale trilogy, which kind of like uh, changed my life in many ways at that age. And Wolfgar was definitely the character that made me want to always play like a barbarian for life in every RPG where it was possible. So yeah, that was a big one for me and my love of fantasy. So the next question is, what question would you ask your favorite booktubers? I don't really know. I'm bad at coming up with questions for people, but maybe what's your favorite pre-90s fantasy series that is not Lord of the Rings or anything by Tolkien? I would love to hear some Rex. So yeah, I guess that's my question. And then the next one after that is, what challenges do you think starting a booktube channel will be hardest to overcome? Again, not really sure. I came into this with like I don't think any any of the technical skills needed. So as far as like speaking in front of a camera, I know I have a long way to go, and like editing and that kind of thing. So I mean, there's plenty of challenges, but I'm so far it's been a lot of fun. So no matter what the challenges are, I'm having fun with them anyway. So um, definitely background though, I think too. Like I think just I live in a smaller apartment that's pretty dark just with like the way the lighting, like the ceiling lighting and everything is set up just because it is an older place. So I think yeah, background and lighting, trying to figure that out eventually. But yeah, we'll see. But so far, like I said, I'm having fun with it. I think slowly improving over the last few videos. I don't know, but yeah. Next question. When did you start reading? I don't know how old I was. I remember when I was around like 4 years old or something, having a Gulliver's Travels coloring book that had like the story going on page by page, and then you could color as you're going along. And my father using that to teach me how to read, because I remember that he wanted me to learn how to write my name and kind of learn my letters and all that before I officially went into kindergarten, or maybe it was like in the early days of junior kindergarten. I can't remember, but yeah, somewhere around there, I guess. And I remember like I used to read a lot with my grandmother when I was quite like in kindergarten and stuff too. A lot of like mythology and folk tales. Like my family would bring me Greek mythology books back from when they went to Greece. They would bring some back, and so she would teach me. Um, those would have been in Greek, but yeah. So 4 years old. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know exactly what age I started reading, but I definitely became a reader very early, that's for sure. My mom always encouraged that in me, and I took to it very quickly. So where do you read? Not a too exciting answer. It depends on the time of day. If I read in the morning before work, I read usually at my kitchen table or in bed. And then if I'm reading in the evenings, also a lot of times in bed or on the couch. So not a ton of options, but yeah. And then the last question I think here is, what kind of books do you like to read? So my favorite genres are definitely fantasy and historical fiction. On the fantasy front, I tend to like a lot of traditional fantasy that takes place in medieval settings a lot. Not as into stuff like urban fantasy, but every once in a while I'll find something in that subgenre that I like quite a bit too. But yeah, a lot of traditional epic fantasy, sword and sorcery. Yeah. Historical fiction that I enjoy most tends to be those that take place in the Middle Ages or in ancient times. I don't like historical fiction that's heavy on romance. In general, I'm not a huge romance fan, with one odd exception is I really like 19th century Georgian and Victorian um, romances sometimes. I think part of it is because I also really love Gothic fiction, so a lot of early Gothic fiction kind of blended with really hilarious romance in it as well that I just get a kick out of reading. You almost want to kind of read it in this dramatic way that, yeah, I get a kick out of. I also find Jane Austen hilarious, so I like her romances. But other than that, historical fiction in general, like I just like medieval and ancient stuff, especially like a lot of like my favorite series of all time of any genre is the Saxon Stories by Bernard Cornwell, for example. So just yeah, stuff like that. I also love a lot of mystery. I kind of got that from my mom. She was always a big mystery reader, so I kind of became one as well growing up. As I mentioned, like I grew up with Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew too. I also love a lot of apocalyptic fiction and dystopian fiction, so I read a lot of that. I've been, I think, especially fascinated by it since I was like 18, 19 years old when I first read We by Evgeny Zamyatin. I really loved it back then, and I really should reread it sometime soon. But I remember one of the things I liked most about it was kind of feeling like as you're reading it, decoding the meaning behind just a lot of the symbolism and that kind of thing. I think that's what attracts me to a lot of dystopian stuff is just kind of like the socio-political like comparisons and trying to kind of um, yeah decode like that symbolism and everything. There's a lot of cool symbolism I remember, and we again I should probably reread it. And I think that's probably why I also really love Octavia Butler's stuff is that her like her reading her stuff, it's like peeling an onion. It's like layers upon layers upon layers of meanings and symbols, and yeah. So all that to say, one of the big reasons I like those two genres. I also really like things like sci-fi and horror. I love gothic fiction, as I mentioned, especially earlier gothic fiction. Although there is a lot of like early to mid 20th century gothic fiction that I like a lot too. A Haunting of Hill House is one of my favorite gothic horror novels, that's for sure. Um, so I think that brings me to the end of this book tag and therefore the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.